6 months of carefully constructed distance shattered the moment I walked into the Grandmont Hotel ballroom. The architectural firm had been clear. My presence was required tonight, not optional. The Hamilton Towers project was my design, my first major contract since the divorce, and the unveiling needed its creator present for photographs and donor questions. I had argued against attending, citing a dozen excuses, but my boss Marcus had been firm. This was career-defining exposure. So here I stood in a charcoal gray dress with strategic ruching that concealed the 5-month swell of my abdomen, my portfolio clutch held defensively across my midsection. The fabric was structured enough to hide what I needed hidden, at least under normal circumstances. But nothing about tonight felt normal. The ballroom buzzed with Manhattan's elite, crystal champagne flutes catching light from enormous chandeliers, laughter and conversation creating that particular frequency of wealth and influence. I recognized faces from magazine covers, politicians whose campaigns dominated election cycles, business moguls who shaped entire industries, and somewhere in this crowd, statistical probability whispered, he might be here too. Franco Pellegrini had significant real estate holdings throughout the city. Charity events like this, where developers networked and deals materialized over canapes, were exactly his territory. I had checked the guest list twice before agreeing to come, relieved when his name didn't appear. But guest lists were suggestions, not guarantees, especially for men like him. Camilla, there you are. Marcus appeared at my elbow, his hand light on my back as he steered me toward the front of the room. The presentation starts in 10 minutes. Are you ready? As ready as I'll ever be, I managed, fighting the urge to press my hand protectively over my stomach. The baby had started moving recently, gentle flutters that reminded me constantly of the secret I carried. Our secret, though the father didn't know he was a father. Marcus studied my face with the perceptiveness that made him an excellent boss and occasionally uncomfortable confidant. You look pale. Are you feeling all right? Just nervous, I lied smoothly, a skill I'd perfected over the past 5 months. Big crowd. You'll be brilliant. The Hamilton design is revolutionary, Camilla. Everyone's talking about it. This is your moment. If only he knew that my moment was currently doing somersaults inside me, completely oblivious to the complexity of its existence. The presentation stage sat at the far end of the ballroom, elevated slightly with professional lighting and a large screen for displaying architectural renderings. I took my position in the wings, watching the event coordinator introduce the evening's program. My hands trembled slightly as I smoothed down my dress one final time, checking that nothing revealed what I needed concealed. That was when I saw him. Franco stood near the bar, a tumbler of what I knew would be aged whiskey in his hand, surrounded by 3 men in dark suits who radiated the particular alertness of professional security. He wore black tonight, perfectly tailored, his dark hair swept back from features that still had the power to steal my breath even after 6 months of deliberate separation. At 35, he commanded space in a way that transcended mere physical presence, something about the set of his shoulders, the calculating patience in his dark brown eyes as they surveyed the room. My heart seized in my chest. He wasn't supposed to be here. The guest list had been clear. But of course, men like Franco Pellegrini didn't follow guest lists. They went where they pleased, when they pleased, and the world rearranged itself to accommodate them. Our eyes met across the crowded ballroom, and I watched recognition flare in his expression. For a single suspended moment, everything else fell away. 6 months of silence, of rebuilding my life from the ashes of our destroyed marriage, of learning to exist without him, all of it compressed into the space between his gaze and mine. Then the event coordinator called my name, and I had no choice but to step onto that stage. The lights were brighter than I'd anticipated, hot against my skin as I moved to the microphone. Professional smile in place, I launched into the presentation I'd rehearsed dozens of times, my voice steady despite the terror racing through my veins. The screen behind me displayed my architectural renderings, the revolutionary sustainability features of Hamilton Towers, the way the design would reshape the downtown skyline. I could feel Franco's eyes on me, tracking my every movement. Did he notice something different? Could he see past the carefully chosen dress to the truth I'd been hiding? Halfway through the presentation, someone opened the ballroom doors at the back of the space. A gust of wind swept through, carrying with it the scent of the rainstorm that had been threatening all evening. I glanced toward the disturbance just as the first drops began falling in earnest, visible through the tall windows that lined one wall. As you can see in this rendering, I continued, pulling my attention back to the presentation, the building's water reclamation system will reduce environmental impact by 40% compared to traditional construction. But the doors remained open, and within minutes, water tracked across the marble floors as late arrivals hurried inside, shaking umbrellas and brushing droplets from expensive coats. The temperature in the room dropped perceptibly, and I suppressed a shiver. When I moved to the side of the stage to point out specific features on the screen, my dress shifted with the motion. The damp air had begun to affect the fabric, making it cling in ways it hadn't when I'd checked my appearance in the mirror an hour earlier. I tugged at the material discreetly, trying to maintain the structured silhouette that had been carefully calculated to conceal. But stage lights combined with moisture worked against me in ways I hadn't anticipated. What had looked perfectly professional in my apartment now pulled tight across my midsection, the ruching flattening out, the careful draping failing its primary purpose. I saw the exact moment Franco noticed. He had been standing near the bar, glass arrested halfway to his lips, when his gaze sharpened on my profile. The tumbler lowered slowly, forgotten, as his eyes traveled from my face to my body and stopped, fixed with absolute focus on the unmistakable curve of my stomach. His face went completely blank, a reaction I'd seen only twice before in the 2 years we'd been married. Once when his underboss had been killed in a territorial dispute, and once on the day the doctor had confirmed I would never be able to give him children. That particular brand of shock, of world-tilting revelation that required total recalibration of reality. I forced my attention back to the presentation, stumbling slightly over my next words. The residential units feature floor-to-ceiling windows that maximize natural light while maintaining privacy through intelligent glass technology. Pull it together, Camilla. Finish this professionally, then get out. Don't look at him again. But avoiding Franco's gaze proved impossible. It burned across the distance between us, demanding acknowledgement, demanding answers to questions he hadn't yet formed into words, but that radiated from him in waves I could feel, even from the stage. The remaining 10 minutes of my presentation passed in a blur of architectural terminology and forced enthusiasm. When the event coordinator finally stepped forward to thank me, I accepted the polite applause with a gracious nod and retreated as quickly as dignity allowed. The backstage area was a maze of corridors leading to various service areas and private rooms. I grabbed my coat from the small dressing room where I'd left my belongings, my only thought to reach the exit before Franco could intercept me. But when I turned toward the main corridor, he was already there, blocking the path with his body. Up close, the changes 6 months had carved into him became visible. New lines bracketed his mouth, shadows haunted the space beneath his eyes, and something fundamental had hardened in his expression. But those dark brown eyes remained devastatingly familiar, currently fixed on me with an intensity that made breathing difficult. Camilla. My name on his lips after 6 months of silence hit like a physical blow. His voice carried that particular rough edge I remembered from late nights and whispered confessions, now edged with something closer to desperation. Franco, I didn't know you'd be here tonight. Clearly. His gaze dropped deliberately to my stomach, then rose again to my face. How far along are you? The direct question shouldn't have surprised me. Franco had never been one for social niceties when he wanted information. That's not really your concern. Not my concern, he repeated, the words flat and dangerous. You're pregnant, Camilla. 5 months, maybe 6 based on what I can see. That makes it very much my concern. You lost the right to concern yourself with my life when you signed the divorce papers, I said, hating how my voice wavered slightly. I need to leave. I moved to step around him, but his hand shot out, fingers wrapping around my wrist. Not painfully, never painfully with me, but firmly enough to stop my momentum. Is it mine? The question hung between us, heavy with implications neither of us was prepared to fully examine. I met his eyes, seeing the war between hope and fear playing out in their depths, and made a decision I would question for weeks to come. No, The single syllable hit him like a bullet. I watched his face cycle through disbelief, hurt, and finally a cold fury that transformed his features into something remote and calculating. You're lying. I'm not. I met someone after the divorce. We didn't plan this, but it happened. The lies tasted bitter on my tongue, but necessary. Franco couldn't know this baby was his. He couldn't know that 2 weeks after signing papers that declared us legally separate, I'd stood in my bathroom staring at a positive pregnancy test, the universe's cruelest joke at our expense. Who? The question came out soft, lethal. Give me a name, Camila. That's none of your business. Everything about you is my business. His grip on my wrist tightened fractionally. You were my wife. You're carrying what you're telling me is another man's child, 6 months after our divorce. So yes, Cara, it's very much my business. The Italian endearment, casual and devastating, nearly broke my resolve. I'd missed that voice calling me Cara, amore, bellissima in moments of tenderness that seemed impossibly distant now. Let me go, Franco. Not until you tell me the truth. His other hand rose to cup my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone with a gentleness that contradicted the steel in his voice. I know every tell you have, every micro-expression when you're lying. Your left eye twitches slightly, right here. His thumb brushed just below my eye. And you're doing it now. Damn him for still knowing me so well. Believing what you want doesn't make it true. Then prove it. Take a paternity test. If this baby isn't mine, I'll walk away and never contact you again. The offer hung in the air between us, a trap I could see but couldn't quite figure out how to avoid. And if I refuse? His expression hardened further, becoming the face of the man who controlled a criminal empire through equal parts strategy and ruthlessness. Then I'll assume you're lying and act accordingly. Is that what you want, Camila? For me to insert myself into your life whether you cooperate or not? Over Franco's shoulder, I could see 2 of his men taking position at either end of the corridor. Not threatening, not yet, but making it clear that leaving wouldn't be as simple as walking past him. This was how it had always been with Franco. Soft words and gentle touches backed by the implicit reminder of the power he wielded. I discovered I was pregnant 2 weeks after we signed the divorce papers, I heard myself saying, the truth spilling out despite my best intentions to keep it contained. The doctor said it was impossible, but apparently medical science isn't infallible. By the time I knew, you'd already made it clear you didn't want a wife who couldn't give you children. So yes, Franco, this baby is yours. But you don't get to claim it just because biology says you contributed genetic material. The confession hit him visibly. His hand dropped from my face, both arms falling to his sides as he processed what I'd revealed. For a long moment, he simply stared at me, working through implications and recalibrations, his brilliant tactical mind sorting through the new information. You were going to keep this from me, he said finally, voice hollow. You were going to raise my child without ever telling me it existed. You divorced me because I couldn't give you an heir, I shot back, anger finally breaking through the careful control I'd maintained. You made it very clear that a wife who couldn't produce children had no place in your life or your family. So forgive me for not immediately running back to tell you the situation had changed. That's not Camila. That wasn't... He stopped, frustration evident in the tension of his jaw. We need to talk about this. Really talk. Not in a corridor backstage at a charity event. There's nothing to talk about. I'm keeping the baby. I don't need your money or your protection or anything else from you. Consider yourself absolved of all responsibility. Like hell I'm absolved. His voice rose slightly, then modulated back to that dangerous softness. That's my child you're carrying. My son or daughter. You think I'm going to just walk away and pretend it doesn't exist? That's exactly what I think you'll do, because you're very good at walking away when things don't meet your expectations. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Franco flinched, the words landing exactly as I'd intended. I'm not walking away from this, from you, not again. You don't get to decide that. Watch me. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then pocketed it again. My car is outside. You're getting in it? We're going somewhere we can discuss this privately, and we're going to figure out what happens next. I'm not going anywhere with you, Franco. Those days are over. Your apartment is 12 blocks from here, and it's pouring rain. You're pregnant, exhausted from that presentation, and trying to walk home in heels that are clearly killing your feet. Stop being stubborn and get in the car. The fact that he was right about all of it only made me angrier. How do you even know where I live? Have you been having me followed? His silence was answer enough. Of course you have. Because respecting boundaries has never been your strong suit. I jerked my arm free from his grip, which had loosened during our argument. Stay away from me, Franco. I mean it. Whatever we were, whatever we might have been, it died when you signed those divorce papers. This baby and I will be just fine without you. I pushed past him before he could respond, moving as quickly as my heels and pregnancy would allow. His men shifted as I approached, but Franco must have given them some signal because they stepped aside, letting me pass without interference. The ballroom had mostly emptied, just staff cleaning up and a few lingering guests finishing conversations. I grabbed my umbrella from the coat check and stepped out into the storm, welcoming the cold shock of rain against my overheated skin. Behind me, I heard Franco call my name one more time, but I didn't turn around. Couldn't turn around. Because if I looked back at him standing in that doorway with devastation written across his features, I might do something catastrophically stupid like admit I'd never stopped loving him. The 12 blocks home passed in a blur of rain and regret, my mind replaying the confrontation on an endless loop. Franco knew now. The secret I'd guarded for 5 months was out, and there was no putting it back. Whatever came next would reshape both our lives in ways I couldn't predict, and wasn't sure I was prepared to handle. But as I finally reached my building, soaked through and shivering, I looked up to see a familiar black car idling across the street. Franco hadn't followed me directly, but he'd ensured I got home safely. Even now, even angry and hurt and blindsided, he was protecting me. That realization terrified me more than anything else that had happened tonight. Morning light filtered through my apartment windows when the knock came, firm and unmistakable. I'd been awake since 5, unable to sleep after seeing that black car stationed outside my building all night. Part of me had known Franco wouldn't simply accept my dismissal at the charity event. Men like him didn't walk away from revelations that upended their understanding of reality. I opened the door to find him standing there with another man, older, carrying a leather briefcase that screamed expensive attorney. Franco looked like he hadn't slept either, still wearing the black suit from last night, though his tie was gone and the top buttons of his shirt were undone. His dark brown eyes tracked over me with clinical assessment, cataloging details with the precision I remembered from our marriage. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "May we come in? Do I have a choice?" I stepped aside, gesturing them into my modest living space. The contrast between Franco's tailored presence and my simple furniture was stark, a physical manifestation of how far apart our lives had become. The attorney introduced himself as Richard Thornton, spoke briefly about confidentiality and legal representation, then produced documents from his briefcase with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Pellegrini would like to request a paternity test. The procedure is non-invasive, requiring only a blood sample from you and Mr. Pellegrini. Results take approximately 3 days, and if I refuse?" I remained standing, arms crossed defensively over my chest. "Then we proceed through legal channels, which will be considerably more unpleasant for everyone involved." Thornton's tone was professional, but left no doubt about the seriousness of the situation. Franco, who had been silent since entering, finally spoke. "Camilla, please. I'm not asking as what I am in the rest of my life. I'm asking as a man who just discovered he might be a father. I need to know the truth." The vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the crime boss who commanded fear and respect throughout Manhattan. This was the man I'd fallen in love with. The one who existed in quiet moments between us, stripped of armor and pretense. "Fine," I heard myself say. "When and where?" Thornton handed me a card. "This clinic specializes in confidential medical testing. I've arranged for an appointment this afternoon at 2. Everything will be completely private." After they left, I sat on my couch for a long time, processing what had just happened. 3 days until Franco knew with scientific certainty that this baby was his. 3 days before everything changed again. The clinic was located in a discreet medical building in the Upper East Side, the kind of place where celebrities and wealthy clients went for procedures they didn't want publicized. A nurse led me to a private room where Franco already waited, his sleeve rolled up, a small bandage visible on his inner elbow. "Your turn," the nurse said pleasantly, preparing the blood draw with professional efficiency. I watched the dark red fill the vial, taking with it any hope I'd had of keeping this secret contained. Franco walked me out afterward, his hand light on my lower back in a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. 3 days, he said quietly as we reached my car. Then we figure out what comes next. There's nothing to figure out, Franco. Biology doesn't erase 6 months of separation. It changes everything. And you know it. His fingers tightened slightly against my back. That's my child you're carrying, Camilla. My son or daughter. You think I'm going to stand aside and watch from a distance? I think you're going to do what you always do. Try to control the situation. Make decisions without consulting me. Assume you know what's best. The bitterness leaked through despite my attempt at neutrality. That's not fair. Isn't it? You divorced me without even discussing alternatives. Signed papers that destroyed our marriage because I couldn't meet your family's expectations for an heir. So forgive me for not trusting your sudden interest now that circumstances have changed. He flinched at the accusation, but didn't deny it. I made mistakes, Camilla. I'm not asking you to forget that. But this baby deserves better than parents who can't even have a civil conversation. That night, unable to sleep again, I did what I'd been avoiding for months. I pulled out the box of documents from our marriage, the medical records from the fertility specialist we'd consulted, the test results that had declared me definitively infertile. Looking at them with fresh eyes, no longer clouded by grief and self-blame, I noticed inconsistencies I'd missed before. The dates on some reports didn't align properly. One test showed my hormone levels as critically low, but a test performed just 2 weeks earlier at my regular doctor's office showed completely normal results. I'd been so devastated by the diagnosis, so willing to believe I was broken, that I hadn't questioned the discrepancies. The next morning, I made an appointment with a different fertility specialist, bringing all my old records. Doctor. Sarah Mitchell reviewed everything with meticulous attention, her expression growing increasingly troubled. "Ms. Wells, these results don't make sense," she finally said, tapping the file from our original doctor. "Your baseline blood work from your general practitioner shows perfectly normal ovarian function. But then suddenly, according to this specialist, you have the hormone levels of someone in menopause. That's not medically possible without significant trauma or disease, neither of which is evident in your history. What are you saying?" "I'm saying these results appear to have been altered or falsified. I'd like to run my own tests, but based on your current pregnancy, I think we both know you're not infertile." She leaned forward, concern evident in her eyes. "Ms. Wells, someone lied to you. The question is why?" I left her office with copies of everything, my mind racing through implications. Who would benefit from convincing Franco and me that I couldn't have children? Who had access to alter medical records? And most importantly, was this connected to Franco's world in ways I'd never considered? The third day arrived with excruciating slowness. I was reviewing architectural plans at my apartment when Franco appeared at my door. No advance warning, no attorney this time. He held a folder that I recognized immediately as the paternity test results. 99.9% probability, he said without preamble. "I'm the father." "I know." I stepped aside to let him enter, then handed him the folder Dr. Mitchell had prepared. "But you need to see this." I watched him read through the documents, saw the exact moment comprehension dawned. His face went through a series of transformations, confusion giving way to understanding, and then to cold, lethal fury. "Someone falsified your fertility tests." It wasn't a question. "Dr. Foster, the specialist we consulted, these are his reports, and they don't match any of my other medical records. Someone paid him to lie to us, Franco, to destroy our marriage by making us believe I couldn't give you children." He was already pulling out his phone, barking orders in Italian too rapid for me to follow completely, but I caught enough. "Find Foster. Bring him to the warehouse. I want every financial record, every communication, everything." "Franco, wait. We should go to the authorities. File a complaint with the medical board. No. The single word carried absolute finality. This was deliberate sabotage of my marriage, of my family line. This isn't a matter for civilian authorities. You can't just Franco. You can't kill a doctor because he falsified medical records. His dark eyes met mine, and I saw something terrifying in their depths. I'm not going to kill him. I'm going to find out who paid him and why. Then I'll decide what happens next. This is exactly what I mean. You make these decisions without considering. I'm not a bystander here, Franco. This happened to me too. To us. I have a right to know why. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're right. This involves you as much as it involves me. He made another call, this one brief. My people are pulling Foster's financial records now. They'll have answers within hours. When they do, you'll be there for the conversation. You're going to let me be present when you interrogate him? You just said you have a right to know why. I'm agreeing with you. His expression softened marginally. I'm trying, Camilla, to include you, to not make unilateral decisions. It's not something that comes naturally, but I'm trying. The acknowledgement surprised me more than his agreement. Franco rarely admitted to struggling with anything. 4 hours later, we sat in Franco's car outside a nondescript building in an industrial area I didn't recognize. He'd explained on the drive that Foster had gambling debts, serious ones, with multiple creditors. One creditor stood out, a shell company that traced back to the O'Sullivan family, one of Franco's primary rivals in the city's criminal hierarchy. They've been trying to weaken my position for years, Franco said, his voice tight with controlled rage. Attacking businesses, turning allies, but this, destroying my marriage to prevent an heir, this is long-term strategic thinking. So they paid Foster to lie to us, to make you vulnerable by ensuring you had no children to continue your family line. Exactly. No heir means questions about succession, internal power struggles, weakness my enemies could exploit. They played a long game, Camilla. And it almost worked. Inside the building, in a room that was surprisingly clean and well lit despite my expectations, Dr. Foster sat in a chair flanked by 2 of Franco's men. He looked terrified, which was probably appropriate given the circumstances. Franco didn't waste time with pleasantries. He simply laid out the evidence, the discrepancies in my medical records, the shell company payments, the connection to the O'Sullivan family. Tell me exactly what happened. Who approached you? What they offered? What you did? Leave nothing out. Foster's confession spilled out in a rush. The O'Sullivans had discovered his gambling problem, used it as leverage to force his cooperation. He'd been instructed to falsify my test results, to make the infertility diagnosis seem medically sound and irreversible. In return, his debts would be forgiven and he'd receive $50,000. I'm sorry, Foster said, looking at me with what might have been genuine remorse. I didn't understand the full implications. They said it was just business, that preventing a rival's heir was standard strategy in your husband's world. I never thought about what it would do to you personally. You destroyed my marriage, I said quietly. You made me believe I was broken, defective, unable to give my husband what he needed, and you did it for money. Franco's hand found mine, squeezing gently. It was the first time he'd touched me with tenderness since our confrontation at the charity event, and despite everything, the contact sent warmth through me. You're going to write out a complete confession, Franco told Foster. Every detail, every interaction with the O'Sullivans, every payment you received. Then you're going to disappear. Leave the city, change your name if you're smart, and never practice medicine again. If I ever hear you've returned to New York or contacted the O'Sullivans, what happens next won't be a conversation. After Foster was escorted out to complete his confession, Franco turned to me. They did this to hurt me, but they hurt you worse. I'm going to make sure they understand that was a mistake. What are you going to do? What I should have done years ago. End the O'Sullivan problem permanently. They declared war on my family when they destroyed my marriage. Now they'll learn what that costs. The drive back to my apartment passed in silence, both of us processing what we'd learned. When Franco walked me to my door, he paused. his hand still holding mine. I know I don't have the right to ask this, but I'm asking anyway. Let me protect you. The O'Sullivans know about the baby now, and they'll see it as a threat to whatever endgame they've been planning. You're not safe on your own. I've been managing just fine for 6 months. You've been followed for the past 2 days by men who don't work for me. I had them identified. They're O'Sullivan soldiers, and they're watching you because they think your pregnancy is leverage they can use against me. The revelation sent ice through my veins. You're sure? Completely. Camilla, I need you somewhere I can keep you safe. Both of you. His free hand moved to rest gently against my stomach, the first time he'd touched the physical evidence of our child. Please, let me do this one thing right. Looking into his eyes, seeing genuine fear beneath the controlled exterior, I made a decision that would change everything yet again. Okay, but we establish boundaries, Franco. I'm not moving back into your life as if the past 6 months didn't happen. I'm accepting protection because our baby deserves to be safe. Not because I'm ready to forgive everything. I understand. Whatever boundaries you need, we'll establish them together. He pulled me gently closer, pressing his forehead against mine in a gesture of gratitude and relief. Thank you for trusting me with this. As I packed a bag for what Franco assured me would be a temporary relocation to a secure property, I wondered if I'd just made the smartest or stupidest decision of my life. But feeling the baby flutter in response to my stress, I knew I'd made the only choice available. Whatever came next, at least we'd face it together rather than in the dangerous isolation I'd been maintaining. The secure property Franco had arranged turned out to be a penthouse apartment in one of Manhattan's most exclusive buildings, complete with doormen who looked more like Special Forces operatives than hospitality staff. I'd expected something fortress-like and oppressive, but the space was surprisingly comfortable, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of Central Park and furnishings that managed to be both luxurious and livable. This is temporary, Franco said as he carried my bags inside, reading my expression with that uncanny ability he'd always possessed, until we neutralize the O'Sullivan threat. Then you can return to your apartment if that's what you want. It's what I want, I confirmed, even as part of me recognized the appeal of this protected bubble. I'm accepting your help because our baby's safety requires it, not because I'm ready to resume our life together. I understand. Tyner, he set my bags down in the master bedroom, then turned to face me fully. Camilla, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to do to the O'Sullivans, it won't be pleasant or legal. I'm telling you this because you deserve honesty, but I'm also telling you that you can't be involved beyond knowing it's happening. You're going after them. It wasn't a question. They declared war on my family when they paid Foster to destroy my marriage. They made it personal, targeted the most important relationship in my life to weaken my position. That requires a response. His dark brown eyes held mine. I won't apologize for what I'm about to do, but I also won't lie to you about it. The honesty was new. This willingness to acknowledge the darkness of his world rather than trying to shield me from it. Just promise me you'll come back. This baby deserves to know their father. Something vulnerable flickered across his face. I promise. Nothing is more important than that. After Franco left, I explored the penthouse, noting the security features seamlessly integrated into the design. Bulletproof windows, reinforced doors, cameras in every corridor. This wasn't just a safe house. It was a fortress disguised as luxury living. My phone rang late that night. An unfamiliar number, but something made me answer. Camilla Wells? A woman's voice, cultured and confident. This is Lucia Pellegrini, Franco's sister. I hope I'm not calling too late. Franco had mentioned a sister once or twice during our marriage, always in passing, never with much detail. No, I'm awake. How did you get my number? My brother provided it. I asked him to. Camilla, I need to apologize to you, and I'd like to do it in person if you're willing to meet. There was genuine remorse in her tone. What happened to your marriage? What our family allowed to happen, I should have stopped it. I should have fought harder to make Franco see reason. We agreed to meet the following afternoon at a cafe near the penthouse. Lucia arrived precisely on time. A woman in her early 30s with Franco's dark hair but softer features, dressed in understated elegance that spoke of old money and good taste. Thank you for coming, she said, as we settled into a quiet corner booth. I wasn't sure you would. given everything. I'm curious, I admitted. Franco rarely spoke about his family beyond business obligations. That's Franco. He compartmentalizes everything, keeps the personal and professional separate even when they shouldn't be. Lucia ordered espresso, then turned her full attention to me. I need you to understand that I knew. When the fertility issue started, when the pressure from our family mounted, I watched my brother slowly destroy the best thing in his life because he couldn't see past his obligations to produce an heir. You tried to stop him? Not hard enough. I told him he was making a mistake, that divorcing you would be something he'd regret forever. But Franco has this stubborn streak, this inability to show vulnerability. He convinced himself that letting you go was noble, that you deserved someone who could give you a normal life and children. She paused, emotion evident in her voice. He's been miserable for 6 months, Camilla. Absolutely destroyed by what he did. Then why didn't he fight for me? Why did he just sign the papers and walk away? Because he thought that's what you needed. Franco doesn't understand love the way normal people do. He sees it as responsibility, as protection, as making hard decisions for someone else's benefit. The idea that you might have wanted him despite the infertility diagnosis, that you might have been willing to build a different kind of life together, it never occurred to him. I absorbed this, processing a perspective on Franco's motivations I hadn't considered. You said you should have fought harder. What does that mean? I should have told him that family legacy and heirs don't matter if you're alone at the end, that our father's obsession with continuing the bloodline cost him everything that mattered, and Franco was repeating those mistakes. Lucia reached across the table, her hand covering mine. I'm telling you now what I should have told him then. You were the best thing that ever happened to my brother. You made him human in a world that demands he be a monster. And I will spend however long it takes making sure this time he doesn't lose you again. The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. Why are you telling me this? Because you're carrying my niece or nephew, and because you deserve to know that you have allies in the Pellegrini family beyond just Franco. Whatever boundaries you need to establish with him, whatever time you need to heal, I'll support that. But I also want you to know that he loves you, Camilla. Desperately, completely, in the only way he knows how. Over the following weeks, Lucia became a genuine friend, someone I could talk to about the complicated reality of carrying Franco's child while still processing the pain of our divorce. She accompanied me to prenatal appointments when Franco was handling business, brought me books on pregnancy and parenting, and listened without judgment when I needed to vent about her brother's overprotective tendencies. Because Franco, despite his promise to respect boundaries, was present in ways that blurred the lines we'd established. He appeared at my prenatal appointments with uncanny timing, sitting quietly in the corner while the doctor checked the baby's heartbeat and measured my growing belly. He never intruded, never made demands, but his presence was a constant reminder of what we'd been and what we might become again. The baby's measuring perfectly, Dr. Mitchell announced at my 20-week appointment, the ultrasound screen showing a tiny profile and moving limbs. Would you like to know the sex? I glanced at Franco, who had risen from his chair to stand beside me, his eyes fixed on the screen with an expression of wonder I'd never seen before. What do you think? Your choice, he said quietly. Whatever you want to know or not know, I'm fine with. Let's find out. I turned back to the doctor. We'd like to know. It's a girl. Dr. Mitchell smiled as she pointed to specific markers on the screen. A healthy, active little girl. Franco's hand found mine, squeezing gently, and when I looked up at him, there were tears in his dark eyes. A daughter, he whispered. We're having a daughter. The vulnerability in his voice, the pure joy mixed with fear, made my own eyes well up. For this moment, the past 6 months fell away, and we were just two people marveling at the life we'd created together. After the appointment, Franco walked me back to the penthouse, his hand on my lower back in that protective gesture I'd never quite managed to hate. Thank you, he said as we reached my door, for letting me be there for that. She's your daughter too. You have a right to these moments. I know, but you didn't have to allow it. You could have kept me at a distance, only informed me of medical necessities. The fact that you're including me means everything, Camilla. I studied his face, noting the changes 6 months had carved into his features. He looked older, wearier, but also somehow more present than he'd been during our marriage. Lucia said you've been miserable since the divorce. My sister talks too much, but there was no heat in the words. Though she's not wrong. Walking away from you was the hardest thing I've ever done, and I've done some very hard things in my life. Then why did you do it? Because I believed you deserved better than a broken marriage with a man who couldn't give you what you needed. Children, specifically. The ability to build a normal family without the complications my world brings. He leaned against the doorframe, exhaustion evident in his posture. I was wrong, obviously, but at the time, it seemed like the noble choice. It wasn't noble, Franco. It was cowardly. You made a unilateral decision about our marriage without consulting me, without considering that I might have wanted to fight for us despite the obstacles. I know that now. He met my eyes. No defensiveness, just acknowledgement. I'm trying to be different this time. To include you, to respect your choices, to not assume I know what's best. It doesn't come naturally, but I'm trying. The admission, combined with the evidence of his changed behavior over the past weeks, softened something in my chest that I'd been keeping deliberately hardened. I know you are, and I appreciate it, even when I'm too stubborn to say so. A week later, Franco arrived at the penthouse earlier than usual, his expression grim, in a way that immediately put me on alert. We need to talk about security measures. The situation with the O'Sullivans has escalated. How so? He pulled out his phone, showing me surveillance photos of men watching the building where my old apartment was located. They've increased presence around your former residence. They don't know you've relocated yet, but they're clearly planning something. What kind of something? The kind where they take you to use as leverage against me. Force me to cede territory or make concessions in exchange for your safe return. His jaw tightened. It's a strategy that's worked against other families. They're betting I won't risk your life or the baby's. So what do? I'm going to end this. Permanently. The O'Sullivan family has been a problem for years. But this, targeting you, targeting our child, that crosses a line I can't allow to remain uncrossed. He pocketed his phone. I wanted you to know before I moved forward. And I wanted to make sure you understand that things might get dangerous in the short term before they get safer. How dangerous? There will be retaliation attempts. The O'Sullivans won't go quietly. That's why I need you to stay here, in this building, with security present at all times. No exceptions, Camilla. Not until this is resolved. The request was reasonable given the circumstances, but it still chafed. I have work, Franco. Projects I'm responsible for. Work remotely. I'll provide whatever equipment or resources you need, but I can't protect you if you're moving around the city unpredictably. He moved closer, his hands framing my face with surprising gentleness. Please, I can't lose you again. And I can't lose our daughter before she's even born. Let me keep you both safe. Looking into his eyes, seeing the genuine fear beneath his controlled exterior, I found myself agreeing. Okay, but once this is over, we go back to the boundaries we established. I'm not becoming a permanent prisoner in a gilded cage. Once this is over, you can have whatever boundaries you need. I just need you alive to establish them. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked from the penthouse while Franco orchestrated whatever moves he was making against the O'Sullivan family. He didn't share details, keeping me deliberately separate from the violence I knew was happening beyond my protected bubble. But I saw the evidence in his face when he visited, the exhaustion and occasionally visible bruises that spoke of physical confrontations. Lucia visited regularly, keeping me company and providing updates that Franco wouldn't. He's being careful, she assured me one afternoon as we sat reviewing paint samples for the nursery I'd started planning. More careful than usual, actually. Normally, Franco leads from the front, but this time he's directing operations remotely as much as possible. Because of the baby, I guessed. Because of you and the baby. He's terrified of something happening to him before she's born, of you raising his daughter alone. Lucia set down the paint samples. My brother has faced death dozens of times in his career, Camilla. But I've never seen him afraid of it until now. The revelation settled heavily in my chest. Franco had always seemed invincible during our marriage, untouchable by the dangers of his world. Knowing he was now vulnerable, that our daughter had given him something to lose that made him cautious, changed something in how I viewed his current actions. That night, Franco appeared at the penthouse later than usual, a fresh cut above his eyebrow and blood on his shirt cuff that I hoped wasn't his. "It's done," he said without preamble. "The O'Sullivan leadership has been neutralized. Their organization is in chaos, and they won't be targeting anyone for the foreseeable future." "Neutralized how?" "In ways you don't need details about. But they're no longer a threat to you or our daughter. That's what matters." I studied him. This man who'd just done terrible things to protect me and our unborn child. "Did you kill them?" "Some. Not all. The ones who directly ordered the hit on Foster and planned your kidnapping. Yes. The rest? I've given them the option to leave the city or face similar consequences." His expression was remote, shuddered in a way that reminded me he existed in a world where violence was currency, and death was negotiable. "I should be horrified," I said quietly. "I should be repulsed by what you've done. But you're not." It wasn't a question. "I'm a mother trying to protect her child. You're a father who eliminated threats to his family. I don't condone the methods, Franco, but I understand the motivation." I moved closer, reaching up to examine the cut on his face. "You're hurt." "It's nothing. Surface wound. Let me clean it anyway." I guided him to the bathroom, pulling out the first aid kit I'd found stocked in the cabinet. As I carefully cleaned the wound, Franco watched me with an intensity that made my hands tremble slightly. "I bought an apartment in your building," he said as I applied antibiotic ointment. 3 floors above this one. "I know you want your own space, and I'm respecting that, but I also can't be far from you right now. This is my compromise, Kara. Close enough to protect you, distant enough to give you the independence you need." The endearment slipped out naturally, and for once I didn't correct him. "When did you buy it?" 2 weeks ago. I've been having it furnished, making it livable. I'll show it to you if you want, once you're cleared to move back to your apartment." "So, I can go home now? The threat is really over?" "The immediate threat, yes. But there will always be other threats, Camilla. That's the reality of my world. And by extension, yours now that you're carrying my child." His hand came up to cover mine where it rested against his face. "I need you to understand what you're accepting. If you allow me to be part of this baby's life, the danger doesn't end. It just becomes manageable. I'm not sure I have a choice. You're her father, Franco. I can't change that even if I wanted to. You do have a choice. You could disappear, change your name, raise her somewhere I'd never find you. I'd let you go if that's what you truly wanted. If you believed she'd be safer without me in her life, I wouldn't fight you." The raw honesty in his voice made my throat tight. "But I'm asking you not to. I'm asking for the chance to be a father, to be present for her in ways my father never was for me. And I'm asking for the possibility that someday you might be able to forgive what I did and give us another chance." Looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability he rarely allowed anyone to witness, I made a decision that would shape all our futures. "I'm not ready to forgive you yet. What you did, divorcing me without really trying to fight for us, that hurt too deeply for quick forgiveness. But I'm willing to let you be present in our daughter's life, to co-parent with you. And maybe, over time, we'll figure out what that means for us." The relief that flooded his expression was almost painful to witness. "That's all I'm asking for. Time and proximity. The rest, we'll figure out together." As he left that night, I watched him go with conflicting emotions. Part of me still resented him for the 6 months of pain he'd caused. But another part, the part that remembered loving him with desperate intensity, recognized that he was trying to change, to be better. Whether that would be enough remained to be seen. But for now, for our daughter's sake, I was willing to find out. 7 months pregnant felt different than 6 months. The baby moved constantly now, little feet pressing against my ribs at inconvenient moments, and standing for more than 20 minutes left me breathless. I'd returned to my apartment 2 weeks earlier, Franco keeping his promise about the purchased unit 3 floors above mine. Close, but not intrusive. This morning, I'd driven myself to the architectural firm's offices for the first time in weeks, needing to review physical blueprints for a project that couldn't be handled remotely. The meeting had gone well, my design for a sustainable housing development winning approval from the city planning committee. I'd felt almost normal, professionally competent in a way that had nothing to do with being Franco Pellegrini's ex-wife, or the mother of his unborn child. That normalcy shattered at 3:47 p.m. when the explosion threw me against the conference room wall. The blast came from the parking garage beneath the building, powerful enough to shake the entire structure and shatter windows on the lower floors. Alarms shrieked immediately, and someone was pulling me toward the emergency stairs, their voice distant beneath the ringing in my ears. "Camilla, can you walk? We need to evacuate now." I managed to nod, one hand protectively covering my stomach as we joined the stream of people flooding down the stairwell. My legs felt weak, adrenaline making everything sharp and surreal simultaneously. When we finally emerged onto the street, fire trucks were already arriving, and smoke billowed from the garage entrance. "That's your car," Marcus said beside me, his face pale as he pointed toward the garage. "Camilla, that's your parking space." My phone was ringing before I could process what he'd said. Franco's name flashing on the screen with an urgency that suggested he already knew what had happened. "Are you hurt?" No greeting, no preamble, just the sharp edge of barely controlled panic. "I'm fine. The baby's fine. We were upstairs when it happened. Stay exactly where you are. I'm sending a car. Don't get in any other vehicle. Don't go back inside that building. Don't talk to police until my attorney arrives." "Do you understand me, Camilla?" The authoritative tone should have annoyed me, but right now, with my car presumably destroyed and the implication of targeted violence sinking in, I found it oddly comforting. "I understand. 5 minutes. The car will be there in 5 minutes." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice had shifted to something rawer. "Thank God you weren't in the garage. Thank God." The line went dead, and I stood on the sidewalk watching emergency responders work, trying to comprehend that someone had just tried to kill me and my unborn daughter. Marcus stayed with me until Franco's car arrived, a black SUV that pulled up with 2 men who immediately flanked me with professional efficiency. "Ms. Wells, we need to get you somewhere secure. Mr. Pellegrini is waiting." The drive took us out of Manhattan entirely, heading north through increasingly rural roads until we reached a property that could only be described as an estate. High walls surrounded acres of manicured grounds, security checkpoints at the entrance manned by personnel who looked more military than civilian. The mansion itself sat at the center, 3 stories of stone and glass that managed to be both beautiful and unmistakably fortified. Franco met me at the front entrance, and for the first time since our divorce, I saw genuine fear in his expression. He pulled me into his arms without asking permission, holding me tight enough that I could feel his heart racing against my cheek. "You're safe now," he murmured into my hair. "I've got you. Both of you." I let myself lean into him, accepting comfort I'd been too proud to seek before. "It was the O'Sullivans, wasn't it? You said they were neutralized. Their leadership was. But organizations don't die just because you remove the head. There are always ambitious underlings looking to make a name for themselves." He pulled back enough to look at me, his hands framing my face. "This is my fault. I should have anticipated retaliation, should have kept you in secure housing longer. You can't predict everything, Franco. I should have predicted this. Targeting you is the obvious move for anyone wanting to hurt me." His thumbs traced my cheekbones gently. "I need you to stay here, not for a few days or a few weeks, until the baby is born, and I can guarantee no one else is planning to finish what they started today." The request was reasonable given someone had just blown up my car. "What about my work? My life? Work remotely again. I'll have everything you need brought here. Whatever equipment, whatever files, whatever makes you comfortable. But please, Camilla, don't fight me on this. I can't protect you if you're moving around the city." Looking at him, seeing the desperation beneath his controlled exterior, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible weeks earlier. "Okay, I'll stay." The relief that washed over his face was immediate and profound. "Thank you. I promise, once she's born and things are stable, you can have whatever independence you need. But right now, keeping you both alive is my only priority." Over the following days, I discovered sides of Franco I'd never seen during our marriage. He'd taken time away from his business operations to be present at the estate, and rather than the distant, preoccupied man I remembered, he was attentive in ways that surprised me. He cooked breakfast every morning, traditional Italian dishes his mother had taught him years ago, serving me at the large kitchen table with casual domesticity that felt surreal. "You need to eat more," he'd say, placing another serving of frittata on my plate. The baby is growing. You're too thin. I'm 7 months pregnant, Franco. I'm not thin. You're beautiful. And you need more protein. He'd sit across from me, watching to ensure I actually ate, occasionally reaching over to squeeze my hand as if confirming I was really there. The nursery he'd prepared occupied a suite of rooms on the second floor, connected to the master bedroom by a door that could remain open or closed as needed. I'd expected typical wealthy excess, but instead found thoughtful practicality. A rocking chair positioned near windows with views of the gardens, blackout curtains for daytime naps, a changing table stocked with supplies organized with military precision. "When did you do all this?" I asked, running my hand over the crib rail he'd clearly assembled himself, based on the instruction manual still sitting on the dresser. "Over the past few weeks. Lucia helped with the decorating choices, but I wanted to build the furniture myself." He stood in the doorway, watching me explore. "I read that babies respond to consistency, familiar surroundings. I wanted her to have a space that felt permanent, even if the situation is temporary." "You've been reading parenting books?" He actually looked embarrassed. A rare expression on Franco Pellegrini. 3 of them. The one about the first year was particularly enlightening. Apparently, I have a lot to learn. The vulnerability in his admission made my chest ache. This was the man I'd fallen in love with. The one who existed beneath layers of control and danger. We both have a lot to learn. Neither of us has done this before. No, but we'll figure it out together. He moved closer, his hand coming to rest on my swollen belly. "She's moving. She does that constantly now. Usually when I'm trying to sleep." I covered his hand with mine, feeling our daughter kick against our joined palms. "She's active like her father, or stubborn like her mother." His dark brown eyes met mine, warm with affection I hadn't seen in months. "Camila, I need to say something, and I need you to really hear it. What happened to our marriage, the divorce, all of it was my failure, not yours. I was so focused on family expectations and producing an heir that I lost sight of what actually mattered. You, us, the life we could have built together regardless of children. Franco, let me finish. Please." He took a breath, visibly gathering courage. "When the doctor said you were infertile, I convinced myself that letting you go was noble, that you deserved someone who could give you everything, including the family I thought you wanted. But the truth is, I was protecting myself. I couldn't face the disappointment I saw in my family's eyes, couldn't handle the pressure of being the one who failed to continue the bloodline. So I took the coward's way out and blamed biology rather than fighting for what we had." The honesty in his confession took my breath away. "You're right. It was cowardly, but I also never told you that I would have stayed anyway, that having children wasn't worth losing you over. Would you have really stayed, knowing what my family expected, knowing the pressure wouldn't end?" "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. "I loved you, Franco, enough to weather whatever storms came our way, but you never gave me the choice." "I know. And I've regretted it every day since I signed those papers." His other hand came up to cup my face. "I'm not asking for forgiveness I haven't earned, but I'm asking for the chance to do better this time, to put you and our daughter first, before family expectations or business obligations or anything else." Before I could respond, a sharp pain lanced through my abdomen, stealing my breath. I gasped, doubling over slightly as my free hand clutched at my stomach. "Camila, what's wrong?" Franco's voice sharpened immediately into command mode. "I don't know. It hurts. Something's not right." Even as I spoke, another contraction hit, harder than the first, and I felt wetness between my legs. "Franco, I think my water just broke, but it's too early. She's not due for 2 more months." His face went pale, but his actions were decisive. Within seconds, he had me in his arms, carrying me toward the garage. "Call Dr. Mitchell." He barked at someone I couldn't see. "Tell her we're coming in. Premature labor, 7 months. Have her meet us at the hospital." The drive was a blur of pain and fear. Contractions came with increasing frequency, each one making me certain something terrible was happening to my baby. Franco drove with one hand on the wheel and the other gripping mine, murmuring reassurances in Italian that I barely processed. "Stay with me, Cara. We're almost there." She's going to be fine. You're both going to be fine. The hospital Franco took me to was private, exclusive, the kind of place where patient privacy was guaranteed and questions weren't asked. Dr. Mitchell met us at a private entrance, already scrubbed and prepared. "Let's get her to a room and assess what's happening," she said calmly, but I could see concern in her eyes. "Mr. Pellegrini, you can come with us." The examination revealed what I'd feared. I was in active preterm labor, contractions becoming regular, and my cervix already beginning to dilate. Dr. Mitchell ordered medications to try stopping the labor. Monitors strapped to my belly tracking the baby's heartbeat. "She's in distress," Dr. Mitchell said quietly, watching the monitors. "Heart rate is elevated. We're going to do everything we can to stop this labor, but you need to prepare for the possibility of delivery. At 7 months, babies can survive with NICU care, but there are risks." Franco stood beside my bed, his hand gripping mine with enough force to be almost painful. "What kind of risks?" "Respiratory issues primarily, underdeveloped lungs. Possible long-term complications depending on how early she's born. We'll do everything medically possible to keep her inside until she's more developed, but ultimately it may not be our choice." Dr. Mitchell's expression was sympathetic. "I'm going to start her on tocolytics and steroids. The tocolytics will hopefully stop contractions. The steroids will help develop the baby's lungs faster in case she does come early." The next 6 hours were the longest of my life. Contractions that had been regular slowly began spacing out as the medications took effect, but the baby's heart rate remained concerning. Franco never left my side, not even when nurses suggested he might want to step out while they worked. "I'm not leaving," he said flatly, his eyes never leaving my face. "Whatever happens, I'm here." Around midnight, after countless monitoring checks and medication adjustments, Dr. Mitchell finally smiled. "The contractions have stopped. Her heart rate is stabilizing. I think we've managed to halt the labor, at least temporarily." The relief was overwhelming. I started crying, exhausted tears of gratitude and leftover fear, and Franco leaned down to press his forehead against mine. "You're okay," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "She's okay. Thank God. You're both okay." "I was so scared," I admitted, my hands clutching at his shirt. "I thought we were going to lose her." "Never. I won't let that happen. I can't lose either of you, Camilla. Not when I just got you back." His lips brushed against my temple, then my cheek, gentle kisses of relief and something deeper. "I love you. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day since we separated. And I'm done pretending that anything matters more than you and our daughter." Looking up at him, seeing tears tracking down his face for the first time in our entire relationship, I finally let go of the anger I'd been holding. "I love you too. Despite everything, despite the pain and the separation, I never stopped. When he kissed me, it was nothing like the passionate encounters from our marriage. This was tender, careful, loaded with 6 months of longing and the terrifying knowledge of how close we'd come to losing everything. His hand cradled my face like I was something precious and fragile, and I kissed him back with all the emotions I'd been suppressing. "We're going to do this right," he said when we finally pulled apart. "No more running. No more making decisions alone. We're going to be a family, the 3 of us. And nothing is going to take that away. Promise me something," I said, my hand covering his where it rested on my stomach. "Promise you'll be present. Really present. Not just physically here, but emotionally available. Our daughter deserves a father who shows up for her. I promise. Whatever it takes. Whatever I have to change about my life or my business, I'll do it. You and her. You're my priority now." His dark eyes held mine with absolute certainty. "I failed you once, Camilla. I won't make that mistake again." As I drifted off to sleep hours later, Franco still holding my hand from the chair he'd pulled beside the hospital bed, I believed him. Not because he'd said the right words, but because I'd seen the terror in his eyes at the possibility of losing us. That fear had stripped away every defense and pretense, revealing the man beneath. And that man, vulnerable and devoted, was someone I could build a future with. The doctor's orders were absolute. Complete bed rest for the remainder of my pregnancy. No stress, minimal activity, constant monitoring. What had started as preterm labor at 7 months could easily happen again, and next time we might not be able to stop it. So I found myself confined to Franco's estate, spending most days in the bedroom with books and architectural plans spread across the bedding, trying to maintain some semblance of productivity. Franco had become a different person in the 3 days since the hospital scare. He checked on me constantly, bringing meals personally, sitting with me while I ate to ensure I actually finished everything. At night, he slept in a chair beside the bed rather than risk disturbing my rest, though I'd told him repeatedly that was unnecessary. "I almost lost you both," he'd said when I protested. "I'm not taking any chances." But beneath his attentiveness, I could see cold fury building. The bombing of my car hadn't been random violence. It was a calculated attempt on my life and our daughters, and Franco wasn't the type of man who let such attacks go unanswered. On the 4th morning, he appeared in the bedroom doorway dressed for business, his expression set in lines I recognized from our marriage. This was Franco Pellegrini, the crime boss, not Franco, the worried father-to-be. "I'm calling a meeting with the 5 families," he said without preamble. "The O'Sullivans violated every code we operate under when they targeted a pregnant woman. That requires a response, and I want it sanctioned by everyone who matters in this city." "What kind of response?" "The permanent kind. Their organization will cease to exist by the end of the month." He came to sit on the edge of the bed, his hand finding mine. "I know you don't approve of violence, Camilla, but this is my world, and in my world, what they did demands consequences." I squeezed his hand, understanding even if I didn't fully condone it. "Just be careful. Our daughter needs her father. She'll have him. I promise you that." After Franco left for his meeting, Lucia arrived to keep me company, bringing pregnancy magazines and a determination to distract me from worrying. We'd grown genuinely close over the past weeks, and I'd come to value her friendship as much as her insights into Franco's complicated psyche. "He's going to war," I told her as she settled into the chair Franco had vacated. "Full scorched earth against the O'Sullivans. Good. They tried to kill you and my niece. They deserve whatever Franco does to them." Lucia's expression was fierce, reminding me she was a Pellegrini too, raised in the same ruthless world as her brother. But knowing Franco, he won't just attack directly. He'll be strategic about it, hit them where it causes maximum damage with minimum risk to our people. Over the next week, I learned Lucia was right. Franco didn't launch open warfare. Instead, he began systematically dismantling the O'Sullivan empire through channels that seemed almost legitimate. Business deals fell through. Shipments were mysteriously delayed or seized by customs. Key allies suddenly withdrew support. It was surgical and devastating, watching from the sidelines as an entire criminal organization slowly collapsed. But something felt wrong. Despite being confined to the estate with round-the-clock security, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, not by Franco's men, but by someone else. Someone whose presence felt invasive rather than protective. The new maid, Sophia, had started working at the estate just days before the hospital incident. She was efficient, quiet, always seeming to be in whatever room I occupied. When Lucia visited, Sophia found reasons to linger, dusting surfaces that didn't need dusting, straightening items that were already straight. "I think we have a problem," I told Lucia one afternoon, when Sophia had left to prepare tea. "The new maid. She's watching me too closely, asking too many questions about my schedule and Franco's movements." Lucia's eyes sharpened immediately. "You think she's a plant?" "I think she's gathering information for someone. The question is what we do about it. We tell Franco immediately. Let him handle it. Or," I said slowly, an idea forming, "we use her. If she's feeding information to the O'Sullivans, we can feed her false information, lead them into making a mistake." Lucia stared at me for a long moment, then smiled with genuine admiration. "You have a devious mind, Camilla. I like it. What did you have in mind?" We spent the afternoon crafting our strategy. When Sophia returned with tea, Lucia spoke deliberately loudly about Franco's plan to move me to a different safe house across the city, mentioning specific details about timing and location. I played my part, expressing concern about the move stressing me out, making it sound legitimate. Sophia's ears had practically perked up at the information, and I noticed her slip out to use the bathroom shortly after our conversation. When Franco returned that evening, we told him everything. His reaction was immediate fury at the security breach, followed by grudging respect for our plan. "You laid a trap using yourself as bait without consulting me first," he said, his tone caught between anger and admiration. "That's either brilliant or incredibly reckless." "It's both," Lucia supplied cheerfully. "But it worked. Look." She showed him surveillance footage from the house security system. Sophia in the hallway, phone pressed to her ear, clearly reporting what she'd overheard. Franco's expression went cold and calculating. "She'll pass the information up the chain. The O'Sullivans will prepare an ambush at the false location, leaving themselves exposed here. We can end this tonight. Just make sure you come back," I said quietly, fear suddenly cutting through my satisfaction at our successful strategy. "Always." He kissed me gently, then turned to his men with orders that would reshape the city's criminal landscape within hours. What Franco did next was something I learned about only in pieces, assembled from Lucia's careful explanations and Franco's brief acknowledgments. He didn't attack the O'Sullivans directly. Instead, he used contacts within federal agencies, people who owed him favors or who had their own reasons for wanting the O'Sullivan organization destroyed, and provided them with evidence of massive money laundering operations. Within 48 hours, FBI raids hit a dozen O'Sullivan properties simultaneously. Assets were frozen, lieutenants were arrested, and the organization's infrastructure collapsed under federal scrutiny. It was elegant and devastating, using the law as a weapon more effective than any violence could have been. But the O'Sullivan family boss, desperate and cornered, attempted one final move. I'd been cleared for a routine checkup, my first trip outside the estate in 2 weeks. Franco had insisted on accompanying me personally, along with enough security to protect a head of state. The appointment went smoothly, the baby's heartbeat strong and steady, my own health showing improvement from the enforced bed rest. We were walking toward the parking garage, Franco's hand secure on my lower back, when I saw them. 3 men moving with purpose through the hospital corridor, hands reaching inside jackets in ways that screamed weapon. "Franco," I started to say, but he'd already seen them. "Get her to the car," he barked at his security, stepping between me and the approaching men. "Now." Everything happened simultaneously. Franco's men pulled weapons, hospital security started shouting, and the O'Sullivan soldiers opened fire in a public hospital parking structure. Franco shoved me behind a concrete pillar, his body a shield between the gunfire and where I crouched, one hand protectively covering my swollen belly. The sound was deafening, bullets ricocheting off concrete and metal, people screaming. I watched Franco direct his men with calm precision despite the chaos, coordinating their response like a military operation. Then I saw the O'Sullivan boss himself emerge from behind a vehicle, weapon raised and pointed directly at Franco. "Behind you!" I screamed, the words tearing from my throat. Franco turned, but not fast enough. The shot caught him high on the shoulder, spinning him partially around. But instead of going down, he stayed on his feet, returning fire with his free hand while his security team converged on the O'Sullivan boss. The entire confrontation lasted maybe 90 seconds, though it felt like hours. When silence finally fell, 3 O'Sullivan soldiers were down, and their boss was being dragged from behind the vehicle, disarmed and bleeding from a leg wound. Franco turned to me, his shirt dark with blood, but his expression more concerned than pained. "Are you hurt? Did anything hit you?" "I'm fine. The baby's fine." "You're shot, Franco? You need medical attention." My hands were shaking as I reached for him, needing to confirm he was really standing, really alive. "It's a graze. Looks worse than it is." But he let me guide him back toward the hospital entrance, his men securing the O'Sullivan boss and calling in cleanup teams for the mess left behind. In the emergency room, while a doctor cleaned and bandaged Franco's shoulder wound, I sat beside him holding his uninjured hand tight enough to hurt. "You could have been killed. You stepped directly into the line of fire. I'd do it again, every time without hesitation." His dark brown eyes held mine. "You and our daughter are my life now, Camilla. Everything else is secondary." The O'Sullivan boss was taken into custody by Franco's people, not the authorities. What happened to him after that, Franco never told me, and I didn't ask. I knew enough about his world, to understand that some questions were better left unvoiced. What mattered was that within days, the O'Sullivan organization had been completely dismantled. Its leadership either in federal prison or disappeared, its territory absorbed by Franco's allies. The threat was over. We were safe. Back at the estate that night, Franco found me in the nursery, standing at the window watching the grounds below. His injured shoulder was immobilized in a sling, a reminder of how close we'd come to tragedy. "You impressed me today," he said, coming to stand beside me. "The trap you set with Lucia, your tactical thinking. You'd make a good strategist in this business. I'll stick to architecture, thanks. Less chance of getting shot." But I leaned into him carefully, mindful of his injury. "Is it really over? Can we finally have some peace?" "For now, yes. There will always be other threats, other rivals, but nothing immediate. Nothing that should affect our family directly." His free hand came to rest on my belly. "She's been quiet today, probably traumatized by all the excitement." "I know I am." I covered his hand with mine. "Thank you for protecting us. For stepping between us and those guns without hesitation. There was no choice to make. You're everything, Camilla. You and her. The rest of it. The business, the territory, the power. None of it matters if I lose you." He pressed a kiss to my temple. "I meant what I said at the hospital. You're my priority now. Both of you. Whatever that means for how I run my organization, I'll figure it out." Standing there in the nursery we'd prepared together, feeling our daughter move beneath our joined hands, I finally believed we might actually have a future. Not the fairy tale I'd once imagined, but something real and complex and worth fighting for. Franco's decision to keep the O'Sullivan boss alive surprised me. I'd expected swift, brutal justice in the wake of the hospital shooting. Instead, he arranged for the man to be held at a property I'd never seen before. Isolated enough that screams wouldn't carry, but civilized enough to allow for conversation rather than just torture. "I want you there for the interrogation," Franco said 2 days after his shoulder wound had been cleared by doctors. "You deserve to look him in the eyes and understand why he tried to destroy our family. Are you sure that's wise? I'm 8 months pregnant, Franco. Stress isn't good for the baby." "I know, but you were right before when you said you deserved answers about what happened to our marriage. This man orchestrated all of it. You should hear directly from him why." His hand found mine, squeezing gently. "Lucia will come too. You won't be alone in this." The property turned out to be a renovated warehouse on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place that looked abandoned from the outside, but concealed sophisticated security within. Lucia met us at the entrance, her expression grim but determined. "Are you ready for this?" she asked me quietly, as Franco conferred with his security team. "What you're about to hear, it's going to change how you see everything that happened. I need to understand, not just for me, but for our daughter. She deserves parents who aren't carrying secrets that could explode later." Inside, the O'Sullivan boss sat in a surprisingly comfortable chair, restrained but not brutalized. He looked older than I'd expected, maybe 60, with gray hair and the kind of weathered face that spoke of decades in a violent profession. When Franco, Lucia, and I entered, his eyes tracked to me immediately, lingering on my pregnant belly with an expression I couldn't quite read. "So this is her," he said, his voice carrying a thick Boston accent. "The woman who became the center of everything. You have no idea what you cost me, Mrs. Pellegrini. It's Ms. Wells now. We're divorced." I moved to stand beside Franco, feeling his presence as both support and shield. "And you're the one who cost me my marriage by paying Dr. Foster to lie about my fertility. So let's not pretend you're the victim here." Something flickered in his expression. Respect, maybe, or just acknowledgement. "Fair point. You've got more spine than I gave you credit for." Franco's voice cut through the exchange, cold and precise. "Tell her why. Tell her why you targeted my marriage specifically, why destroying my ability to have an heir mattered so much to your organization." The O'Sullivan boss was quiet for a long moment, seeming to gather his thoughts or perhaps his courage. When he finally spoke, his words carried the weight of old grief. "Because your first wife was my sister, and you got her killed." The statement hung in the air like smoke. I felt Franco go completely still beside me, his hand tightening on mine with enough force to be almost painful. "That's not possible," Franco said, his voice strained. Your sister? But the records said... The records were altered to hide the family connection. Elena O'Sullivan became Elena Vitale when she married you in that arranged union between our families. She kept her maiden name buried to avoid complications, to make the alliance seem cleaner than it was. The old man's eyes were hard, glittering with unshed tears. She was 23 years old when your enemies killed her. 23. And she died because you couldn't protect her from the Carlucci family's retaliation. I processed this information, fitting it into the puzzle of Franco's past that I'd only ever understood in pieces. He'd mentioned a previous wife exactly once during our marriage, a brief acknowledgement that he'd been married before, that she'd died in an accident. He'd never elaborated, and I'd been too young and too in love to press for details that clearly caused him pain. The Carluccis targeted her because of a territory dispute I had with their organization, Franco said, his voice hollow. I thought it was random violence, wrong place and wrong time. Are you telling me they specifically killed her to hurt me? They killed her to hurt both of us, to send a message about what happens when families challenge their control. The O'Sullivan boss leaned forward as much as his restraints allowed. I wanted to go to war immediately, to burn the Carlucci Empire to the ground. But you negotiated a peace treaty. You made a deal with the men who murdered my sister rather than avenging her. I was trying to prevent more bloodshed. Elena wouldn't have wanted a war. Elena was already dead. What she wanted stopped mattering the moment those bullets hit her. The bitterness in his voice was corrosive. So I decided if you wouldn't avenge her, I'd make sure you suffered for failing to protect her. I'd take from you what you'd taken from me. Family. Legacy. The chance to see your bloodline continue. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. So you paid Dr. Foster to falsify my fertility tests. Made Franco believe he couldn't have children with me, knowing it would destroy our marriage. Exactly. I wanted him to watch his life fall apart piece by piece, to feel the helplessness I felt when Elena died, to know that his failure to protect her had consequences that would echo through generations. He looked at Franco with something between hatred and satisfaction. And it worked. You divorced her. You gave up the best thing in your life because you believed you couldn't have an heir. That's justice, Pellegrini. Franco's face had gone pale, his jaw tight with suppressed emotion. I squeezed his hand, offering what comfort I could while processing my own complicated feelings about this revelation. You're wrong about one thing, I said quietly. Elena's death wasn't Franco's fault. He was young, probably still learning how to navigate your world. The Carluccis made the choice to kill her. You made the choice to seek revenge through destroying another innocent woman's life. Those are your failures, not his. You defend him even after what he did to you? Even after he divorced you rather than fighting for your marriage? I defend the truth. Franco made mistakes, serious ones. But he didn't kill your sister, and he didn't deserve to have his life systematically dismantled for a tragedy he didn't cause. I moved closer, looking the old man directly in the eyes. You let your grief turn you into exactly the kind of monster Elena probably would have hated. That's your real failure. The O'Sullivan boss looked away, something in his expression crumbling. For the first time since we'd entered, he looked less like a dangerous crime lord and more like a broken old man who'd wasted years on vengeance that brought no peace. What happens to me now? He asked Franco, resignation evident in his tone. You're going to federal authorities. I have enough evidence of your organization's crimes to ensure you spend the rest of your life in prison. Your family's empire is already being absorbed by my allies. Everything you built is gone. Franco's voice was flat, matter of fact. You wanted to destroy my legacy. Instead, you destroyed your own. After we left the warehouse, Franco was silent for the entire drive back to the estate. Lucia sat in the front passenger seat, occasionally glancing back at us with concern, but she didn't try to force conversation. She understood her brother needed space to process what we'd learned. Back at the estate, Franco disappeared into his study for hours. I wanted to go to him, to offer comfort. But Lucia stopped me with a gentle hand on my arm. Let him work through this alone first, she said softly, finding out that Elena was an O'Sullivan, that her death was targeted rather than random. That changes everything he's believed for years. He needs time. Did you know about Elena being an O'Sullivan? I suspected there was more to that marriage than Franco ever admitted. But the family connection, the deliberate targeting, no. Our father kept many secrets, even from us. Lucia guided me to the couch, sitting beside me. Franco loved Elena in his way, but it wasn't the kind of love he has for you. That marriage was duty, obligation, survival. But he still carries guilt about her death, and now he knows it was even more complicated than he thought. When Franco finally emerged from his study near midnight, I was still awake, sitting in the nursery and folding tiny clothes we'd received from Lucia's recent shopping expedition. He stood in the doorway, watching me for a long moment before speaking. I should have told you about Elena, about that whole part of my life. You told me what you were ready to share. I never pressed because I could see it hurt you. I set down the onesie I'd been folding. But now I understand why our fertility issues hit you so hard. It wasn't just about family expectations or producing an heir. It was tied to losing Elena, to feeling like you'd failed her, and now you were failing me, too. I failed both of you. I let Elena die, and I let you go when I should have fought harder to keep you. He moved into the room, kneeling beside my chair despite the awkwardness of the position with his injured shoulder. I don't know how to make up for that, Camilla. I don't know how to be the man you deserve. You start by being honest, by sharing the difficult parts instead of carrying them alone, by letting me be your partner in all of it, not just the good moments. I cupped his face in my hands, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw. And you stop measuring yourself against impossible standards. Elena's death wasn't your fault. Our divorce was mutual failure, not just yours. We move forward from here, not backward. I want to marry you again. The words came out rushed, urgent, before the baby is born. I want us to be a family officially, legally, in every way that matters. Not because of obligations or expectations, but because I love you, and I can't imagine my life without you in it. Looking into his dark brown eyes, seeing the vulnerability he so rarely showed, I made my decision. Yes, but on my terms this time. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. No spectacle, no political alliances, just us making promises to each other. Whatever you want, however you want it, I'll give you anything, Camilla. I just want you. Present, honest, committed to being a real partner. That's all I've ever wanted. The ceremony took place 1 week later in the estate's garden, where late summer flowers bloomed in riotous color. 20 people attended. Lucia and her husband, a few of Franco's most trusted associates, my former boss Marcus, who'd become a genuine friend, and Dr. Mitchell, who'd guided us through the complicated pregnancy. We'd written our own vows, standing under an arch of white roses as the late afternoon sun cast everything in golden light. Franco went first, his voice steady despite the emotion I could see in his eyes. Camilla, I spent years believing that strength meant control, that protecting you meant making decisions for you rather than with you. I was wrong. Real strength is vulnerability, is trusting you enough to share my fears and failures. I promise to be your partner, not your protector, to include you in decisions, to respect your autonomy, to love you as an equal rather than someone I need to shield. You and our daughter are my future, and I will spend every day earning the gift of your presence in my life. My own vows came through tears I didn't bother hiding. Franco, you've seen me at my worst and loved me anyway. You've made mistakes, and I've forgiven them because I've made my own. I promise never to hide important truths from you again, to trust you with my fears and vulnerabilities, to build our family on honesty rather than comfortable lies. We've survived manipulation, violence, separation, and loss. Whatever comes next, we face it together. When Franco slipped the ring onto my finger, platinum with a single emerald that matched my eyes, I felt the weight of everything we'd overcome and everything we'd become. This wasn't the fairy tale wedding I'd imagined at 24 when we'd first married. It was better. Real, complicated, built on foundation of truth rather than romantic illusion. Lucia cried openly during the ceremony, and afterward she pulled me into a tight embrace. Welcome back to the family, sister. This time I promise to fight harder to keep you here. I'm not going anywhere, I assured her, meaning it completely. As evening fell and our small group shared dinner in the garden, Franco pulled me aside to a quiet corner, where we could see the celebration, but have a moment of privacy. Thank you for giving me another chance, for believing I could be better. You are better. We both are. I leaned into him carefully, mindful of his healing shoulder and my very pregnant belly. Now we just have to figure out how to be parents. We'll manage. We survived everything else. His hand rested on my stomach, feeling our daughter's movements. She's lucky to have you as her mother, and you as her father. Despite everything, Franco, you're going to be a good dad. I believe that. Standing in the garden where we'd just pledged our lives to each other again, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Genuine hope for the future. Our story hadn't been easy or simple, but it was ours. And sometimes the most beautiful things are born from struggle. 2 weeks after our garden ceremony, I woke at 2 a.m. to wetness soaking through the sheets and a tightening across my abdomen that felt different from the practice contractions I'd been experiencing for days. Franco was instantly alert beside me, his hand finding mine in the darkness. Is it time? His voice carried controlled tension, the kind he used when preparing for situations he couldn't fully control. I think so. My water broke. Even saying the words made it feel surreal. After months of complications and fear, we were finally here. The drive to the private hospital took 20 minutes that felt like hours. Contractions were already coming regularly, each one stealing my breath and making conversation impossible. Franco drove with one hand on the wheel and the other gripping mine, murmuring reassurances in Italian that I barely processed through the mounting pain. Dr. Mitchell met us in the labor and delivery wing, already scrubbed and prepared despite the early hour. Let's have this baby, she said, with a calm confidence that helped steady my racing heart. What I'd naively expected to be a few hours of manageable discomfort turned into 16 hours of pain that redefined my understanding of the word. The contractions built in waves, each one cresting higher than the last, leaving me gasping and exhausted in the brief respites between. We can give you an epidural, Dr. Mitchell offered during hour 4, when I was gripping the bed rails hard enough to leave marks. It would help manage the pain significantly. No. The word came out sharper than intended. I've read about complications, about the baby being affected. I can do this naturally. Franco, who'd been standing beside the bed holding my hand through every contraction, leaned down to press his forehead against mine. Camilla, if you need pain relief, take it. Don't suffer unnecessarily to prove something. I'm not trying to prove anything. I just need to know she's safe, that nothing I do affects her negatively. Another contraction hit, and I squeezed his hand with brutal force, channeling the pain into that grip. Just stay with me. Don't leave. Never. I'm here for all of it. And he was. Through every agonizing hour, every scream of frustration when my body wouldn't cooperate, every moment when I swore I couldn't do this anymore. Franco stayed anchored beside me, translating medical terminology when my exhausted brain couldn't process it, wiping sweat from my face, letting me grip his hand hard enough that I saw his fingers turn white. Around hour 12, when my energy was flagging and tears of exhaustion streamed down my face, he climbed onto the bed beside me despite nurses' protests about regulations. His arms wrapped around me from behind, supporting my weight, his voice a constant murmur in my ear. You're the strongest person I've ever known. Our daughter is so lucky to have you as her mother. Just a little longer, amore. You can do this. Lucia arrived at hour 14, bringing Franco coffee and fresh clothes he didn't have time to change into. She stayed in the waiting area, giving us privacy, but sending messages of encouragement through the nurses. Tell my sister-in-law she's amazing, and I can't wait to meet my niece. Finally, at 4:37 in the morning, after one last monumental push that felt like it would split me in half, I felt the pressure release and heard the most beautiful sound in the world, our daughter's first cry. She's here, Dr. Mitchell announced, lifting a tiny, screaming, perfect human onto my chest. 7 pounds, 7 ounces. Absolutely perfect. I couldn't see her clearly through my tears, could only feel the warm weight of her against my skin, the reality of this life we'd created. Franco leaned over both of us, his own face wet with tears he made no attempt to hide. She's beautiful, he whispered, his voice breaking. She's absolutely perfect, Camilla. When Dr. Mitchell offered him scissors to cut the umbilical cord, his hands trembled visibly. I watched the most dangerous man in Manhattan cry openly while severing the physical connection between me and our daughter, officially bringing her into the world as her own person. Sophia Elena Pellegrini, I said, naming her aloud for the first time. Sophia for my mother, Elena for yours. Franco's eyes met mine, emotion making them darker than usual. She would have loved that. Both of them would have. The nurses took Sophia briefly to clean her and perform necessary checks, returning her swaddled in a soft pink blanket with a tiny knit cap covering dark hair that looked exactly like Franco's. I held her against my chest, studying every detail of her face, the delicate features, the rosebud mouth, the way her tiny hand wrapped instinctively around my finger. "You did it," Franco said, sitting beside the bed and wrapping his arm around both of us. "You brought our daughter into the world. I've never been more in awe of anyone in my life." Lucia was allowed to visit once I'd been moved to a recovery room, and she burst into tears the moment she saw Sophia. "She's gorgeous. Look at those cheeks. And she has Franco's coloring, but your face, Camilla." She held our daughter with practiced ease, cooing in Italian while Sophia slept peacefully. "I'm going to spoil this little girl absolutely rotten. You'll have to get in line behind her father," I said, watching Franco watch his sister hold his daughter with an expression of such tender protectiveness. It made my heart ache. The first weeks home proved more challenging than I'd anticipated. The night nurse Franco had hired lasted exactly 3 days before I dismissed her, needing to feel capable of caring for my own child, despite the exhaustion threatening to pull me under. "You don't have to do this alone," Franco argued when I sent the nurse away. "There's no shame in accepting help." "I know. But I need to learn her, Franco. Her cries, her needs, her patterns. I can't do that if someone else is handling the night shifts." He accepted my decision without further argument, but he didn't leave me to struggle alone. Instead, he took over responsibilities I hadn't asked him to assume. At 3:00 a.m., when Sophia woke screaming, Franco would be the one to change her diaper while I prepared to nurse, his large hands surprisingly gentle with the tiny snaps and fasteners. Breastfeeding proved harder than any book had prepared me for. Sophia would latch incorrectly, both of us ending up frustrated and crying. Franco sat with me through those difficult sessions, offering water and encouragement, researching solutions on his phone when Dr. Mitchell's advice didn't quite work. "We could supplement with formula," he suggested, after a particularly difficult night. "Just until you both figure this out. One more day. Let me try one more day." My stubbornness was probably making things harder, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to provide this for our daughter. The breakthrough came at 4:00 a.m. on day 6, when Sophia finally latched correctly and actually fed. I cried from relief while Franco sat beside us, his hand resting on my shoulder. "You're amazing," he said quietly. "The determination, the patience, the way you refuse to give up even when it's hard. Sophia is going to learn so much from watching you." I discovered sides of Franco I'd never witnessed during our marriage. He sang Italian lullabies in a surprisingly good voice while walking Sophia through the house when she refused to sleep. He mastered the baby swing mechanics with the same focus he applied to business negotiations. He could change a diaper faster than I could, having apparently studied technique videos until he achieved optimal efficiency. One night I woke to find his side of the bed empty and followed sounds to the nursery, where Franco sat in the rocking chair with Sophia asleep on his bare chest. He was singing softly, something in Italian I didn't recognize. And the expression on his face as he looked down at our daughter was pure, unguarded love. "You're good at this," I said from the doorway, making him look up with a slight smile. "She's easy to love. Takes after her mother that way." He shifted Sophia slightly, supporting her tiny head with practiced care. "I never thought I'd have this, Camilla. After Elena died, after our divorce, I convinced myself that family wasn't something I was meant for, that my life was too dangerous, too complicated. But holding her, knowing she's ours, it makes everything else seem less important." I moved to kneel beside the rocking chair, resting my head against his shoulder. "You're a good father, Franco. Better than you probably believe. I'm trying. That's all I can do. Try to be present. Try to be patient. Try to give her the kind of childhood I never had." His free hand found mine, We're going to make mistakes. Both of us. But we'll make them together. And we'll figure out how to fix them together. At 3 weeks old, Sophia smiled for the first time. A genuine response to Franco making ridiculous faces while changing her diaper. He froze completely, then called for me with such urgency I thought something was wrong. She smiled. Camilla, she actually smiled at me. The wonder in his voice, the joy transforming his features, made me fall in love with him all over again. She knows her daddy, I said, wrapping my arms around him from behind as we both watched our daughter's tiny expressions. She knows you love her. More than anything. More than I knew it was possible to love anyone. He turned to kiss me, gentle and grateful. Thank you for giving me this, for giving me her, for giving us another chance. I know I didn't deserve it, but I'm going to spend every day earning it. Looking at our small family, exhausted and rumpled and more perfectly happy than I'd ever imagined possible, I knew we'd made the right choice. Love wasn't always easy or simple. Sometimes it required fighting through pain and fear and past mistakes. But standing there with Franco and Sophia, I understood that the fighting had been worth it. This messy, complicated, beautiful life we'd built together was worth every struggle that had brought us here. 3 years felt like both a lifetime and a heartbeat. I stood in the kitchen of our home, the estate that had once felt like a fortress, but now simply felt like where we belonged. Watching Sophia chase her father around the dining table with a wooden spoon clutched in her tiny fist. Papa, you have to stir the sauce. Her English carried the musical lilt of Italian beneath it, a product of Franco's insistence on raising her bilingual. At 3 years old, she switched between languages with the ease of someone who'd never known there was supposed to be a difference. I'm being chased by a very fierce chef, Franco called back, his laughter genuine and unguarded in ways I'd rarely heard during our first marriage. She's very demanding about proper technique. I pressed my hand against my abdomen, feeling the flutter of movement that had become familiar over the past 4 months. This pregnancy had been different from the beginning. Planned, celebrated, without the shadow of fear and conspiracy that had colored Sophia's gestation. A boy this time, according to the ultrasound we'd had last week, completing our family in ways neither of us had dared to imagine 3 years ago. My architectural career had evolved in unexpected directions. The firm where I'd worked before Sophia's birth had been understanding when I'd returned part-time. But it was Lucia who'd suggested the specialty that had become my niche. Designing secure properties for families who needed privacy and protection without sacrificing livability. My unique understanding of both architectural principles and security requirements, courtesy of living in Franco's world, made me sought after by clients who valued discretion. You're thinking too hard again. Lucia's voice came from the doorway, her arms full of shopping bags that I knew contained more toys Sophia didn't need. I can actually see the thoughts circling your head. Just reflecting on how different life is now versus 3 years ago. I accepted her hug, careful of the bags and my growing belly. When did you get here? 10 minutes ago. Franco let me in the back. I bring gifts for my favorite niece. She set the bags down and immediately scooped Sophia into her arms, tickling her until the little girl's giggles filled the kitchen. And how is my beautiful goddaughter today? Zia Lucia! Sophia wrapped her arms around Lucia's neck. Papa is making carbonara and I'm helping. I can see that. You're covered in flour. Lucia brushed white powder from Sophia's dark curls, the same shade as Franco's. Should we let your papa finish cooking while you show me the new drawings you made? As Lucia carried Sophia toward the playroom, Franco moved to stand beside me at the counter where I'd been attempting to prepare a salad. His hand came to rest on my belly, a gesture that had become habit over the past months. She's got your determination, he said, pressing a kiss to my temple, and probably your talent, based on those drawings Lucia mentioned. The one she made yesterday was actually architecturally sound, which is impressive for a 3-year-old. She's got your intensity. Have you noticed how she studies things before deciding how to approach them? That's pure Franco Pellegrini strategic thinking. I leaned into him, comfortable in ways our first marriage had never quite achieved. How was the meeting today? Franco's business operations had shifted dramatically over the past 3 years. The criminal enterprises that had once been his primary focus had been gradually divested, sold to allies or simply shut down. In their place, legitimate investments had grown. real estate development, import companies that actually imported legal goods, a private security firm that employed former military personnel and provided protection services to corporations and high-net-worth individuals. Profitable and completely legal, he said with satisfaction. The security consulting contract we landed with the Henderson Corporation is going to be significant. They need comprehensive protection for their executives and facilities across 3 states. No regrets about walking away from the other life? He was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. Some days I miss the simplicity of it, the clear hierarchies, the straightforward problem-solving that violence provided. But then Sophia calls me Papa, or I feel our son moving, or I wake up next to you, and I remember why I made these changes. His hand tightened slightly on my belly. This family is worth more than any empire I could have built in that world. The transition hadn't been seamless. Some of Franco's former associates had viewed his pivot to legitimate business as weakness or betrayal. But his reputation, carefully maintained through strategic alliances and selective demonstrations of the capacity for violence he still possessed, kept most challenges at bay. He was no longer actively leading a criminal organization, but everyone understood that Franco Pellegrini remained dangerous when necessary. Dinner that evening was chaotic in the best possible way. Sophia insisted on sitting in her booster seat between Franco and me, narrating her day in a mixture of English and Italian that required constant translation for the parts that became too rapid or complex. Lucia sat across from us, contributing stories about her own 3-year-old son, making Sophia giggle with exaggerated impressions. Cousin Alessandro and I are going to build a castle, Sophia announced seriously. A big one with towers and a moat. That sounds like an ambitious project, I said, helping her cut her pasta into smaller pieces. Will you design it first? Yes, like you do, Mama. I'll draw pictures and then we'll build it. She turned to Franco. Papa, you'll help, right? Of course. Every good castle needs proper structural support. His face was soft with affection as he watched our daughter plan her construction project. After dinner, while Franco handled Sophia's bath time routine, Lucia helped me clean the kitchen. We worked in comfortable silence for a while before she spoke. You know, when Franco told me he was divorcing you 3 years ago, I wanted to shake him until his brain reset. I could see what he was doing, sacrificing his happiness because he thought it was noble or necessary or whatever rationalization he'd constructed. She rinsed a plate, shaking her head. But watching you two now, seeing how you've rebuilt this relationship on different foundations, it's actually stronger than before. We had to destroy it completely before we could build something real, I said, loading dishes into the dishwasher. The first marriage was built on romance and passion, but we never really communicated about the hard things. This time, we don't have that luxury. Everything is out in the open, including the fact that you're terrified of having a boy. I looked at her sharply. How did you know that? Because I know you. And because raising a son in Franco's world, even the legitimate version of it, comes with different pressures than raising a daughter. She dried her hands, turning to face me fully. But you're going to be an amazing mother to him, just like you are to Sophia. And Franco, he's learned so much from being Sophia's father. He'll teach your son how to be strong without being cruel, how to command respect without demanding fear. I hope you're right. I am. Trust your sister-in-law. She hugged me tightly. Now I'm going to say goodnight to Sophia and head home. Alessandro is probably driving his father crazy by now. After Lucia left, I found Franco in Sophia's room, reading her a bedtime story in Italian. Our daughter was already drowsy, her eyes heavy as she fought sleep to hear the end of the tale. I leaned against the doorframe, watching this nightly ritual that Franco never missed despite business obligations or exhaustion. When Sophia finally surrendered to sleep, Franco tucked her blanket around her carefully and pressed a kiss to her forehead. Sogni d'oro, piccola, he whispered. Sweet dreams, little one. In our own bedroom later, Franco pulled me against him carefully, mindful of my pregnant belly. What were you and Lucia discussing so seriously in the kitchen? The future, our son, whether we're ready for this. I turned in his arms to face him. Are we? Ready for another baby? Another person to love and protect and guide through this complicated world you're part of? No one is ever truly ready, but we'll figure it out together, just like we figured out everything else. His hand traced patterns on my back, soothing and familiar. I'm not the same man who divorced you, Camilla. That version of me believed he had to control everything, had to make all the decisions, had to shoulder all the burdens alone. This version understands that strength comes from partnership, from trusting you to help carry the weight. You really have changed. The old Franco would never have admitted uncertainty or vulnerability. The old Franco was lonely and convinced that admitting weakness would get him killed. This Franco has too much to live for to waste energy on pretending to be invincible. He shifted to cradle my face in his hands. I love you. I love our daughter. I already love our son. Everything else is secondary to protecting and nurturing this family we've built. Sleep came easily that night, wrapped in Franco's arms with our daughter safe in the next room, and our son growing steadily within me. The nightmares that had plagued me during our separation, the anxiety that had colored Sophia's pregnancy, all of it had faded into memory. Morning brought the chaos of getting Sophia ready for her preschool, a small private institution that specialized in bilingual education and catered to families who valued both academics and security. Franco handled the morning routine with practiced efficiency, braiding Sophia's hair while she ate breakfast, packing her lunch with the specific items she'd requested, making sure her favorite stuffed animal was in her backpack. "Papa, can Mama come to pick up today?" Sophia asked as Franco helped her into her jacket. "Mama has a meeting with clients this afternoon, remember? But I'll be there, and we can go to the park after if the weather holds." He crouched to her eye level. "Is that okay?" "Yes. And we can feed the ducks?" "If the ducks are there, absolutely." Watching Franco with Sophia, seeing the patience and presence he brought to fatherhood, erased any lingering doubts about his ability to be equally devoted to our son. He'd learned from his own father's failures, had consciously chosen to be different, and the evidence of that choice was visible in every interaction with our daughter. My afternoon meeting was with a client who needed a secure family compound designed, someone whose wealth and profile made them a target for various threats. As I walked them through preliminary designs that incorporated sophisticated security without feeling like a prison, I reflected on how far I'd come professionally. This career, built from the ashes of my previous life, felt more meaningful because it helped families stay safe without sacrificing quality of life. When I returned home that evening, Franco and Sophia were in the garden, Sophia helping plant flowers in beds that Lucia had suggested for spring. She was more dirt than child, her clothes filthy and her face smudged, but her laughter was pure joy. "Mama, look what we planted!" She ran to me, leaving muddy footprints across the patio. "Papa says they'll be pink and purple when they grow. They'll be beautiful, just like you, even covered in dirt." I scooped her up despite my growing belly, accepting the muddy hug she offered. Franco appeared beside us, his own hands dirty from gardening. I was going to hose her off before bringing her inside. Let her be dirty for a few more minutes. She's happy. I watched our daughter run back to the flower bed, already planning where the next plant should go. This is what I wanted for her. Normal childhood moments, even if nothing else about our life is conventional. "We've built something good here," Franco said quietly, his arm wrapping around my shoulders. Despite everything that tried to destroy it, we created a family based on honesty and partnership. That's more than most people achieve. That night, after Sophia was bathed and fed and tucked into bed, Franco made carbonara while I documented the moment with my phone camera. Sophia had insisted on helping, despite being clean, and within minutes she'd gotten flour everywhere again, including in her father's dark hair. "She's your daughter," I laughed, capturing Franco's expression of mock exasperation as Sophia dumped another handful of flour onto the counter. Determined and completely oblivious to mess. "She's perfect," he corrected, lifting her to sit on the counter where she could watch him work. Just like her mother. Later, after Sophia had been cleaned up again and convinced to go to bed, Franco and I sat in the living room with glasses of wine for him and sparkling water for me. The house was quiet, peaceful in ways that had seemed impossible during the chaos of our separation. "Do you ever regret giving me another chance?" Franco asked suddenly, his dark eyes searching my face. "Taking me back after everything I put you through?" "Never. Not once." I took his hand, squeezing firmly. "Was it easy?" "No." "Did I forgive you immediately?" "Absolutely not. But choosing to rebuild with you, choosing to let you be present for Sophia and for this new baby. That's the best decision I've made. We're not the same people who got divorced, Franco. We're better versions, built from the lessons of our mistakes. I'm going to be a good father to our son. I promise you that. I know you will. You're already an incredible father to Sophia. Our son will be just as lucky. I shifted to rest my head on his shoulder. We've survived everything that tried to tear us apart. Medical fraud, criminal conspiracies, car bombs, hospital shootings, all of it. Whatever comes next, we handle it together. Together, he echoed, pressing a kiss to my hair. Always together. Looking around our home, at the family photos on the walls showing Sophia's first smile, her first steps, Lucia holding her goddaughter with pride, Franco covered in cake at Sophia's first birthday party, I understood that we'd achieved something rare. Not a fairy tale where everything was perfect, but a real partnership built on truth and mutual respect. Our family wasn't conventional. It was complicated, built from the ashes of pain and mistakes, strengthened by honesty that had been painfully earned, but it was ours. Messy, imperfect, and absolutely worth every struggle that had brought us here, and that made all the difference.